Todo mundo animado? Legal, bacana. Prazer estar com vocês hoje. Que bom que vocês vieram. Hoje a gente vai ter a presença novamente aqui no Cubo do Jacco nosso fundador, Clarissa, do nosso time, Luca, aqui com vocês. E a gente vai falar um pouquinho da experiência do que está acontecendo lá no Vale, para vocês terem uma visibilidade do que mais a gente pode fazer aqui, o que a gente ainda pode aproveitar de maiores inovações, do que a gente está fazendo, o que fazer de melhor. Com vocês, a palavra do nosso fundador, Jacco.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all. Those of you, has any of you seen me before? Raise your hands if you've seen me before. 1, 2, okay. Start to get many new people as well. Waving to the folks in the booth. Yes, my presentation is ready. Oh, something is locked up. No, I'll probably my password is done. No more battery?
Ligaram só para o dele. Ah, voltou. Quem aqui é residente do Cubo, levanta a mão. Bacana, muito bom. Vocês já tinham visto Jacco? Não? Ah, uma pessoa sim, muito bom. O que você achou dele a primeira vez que ele veio aqui? Incrível, por quê? Bacana, então aproveitem. A expectativa é a seguinte. Ontem ele chegou às 10h30 da manhã, o voo dele. Chegou no Brasil. Ele pegou um táxi, ele falou, Renata, eu preciso tomar um banho. Quem já foi para São Francisco sabe que o voo demora mais ou menos 24 horas. Aquela coisa de vir, voltar, chegar aqui e tal. É um pouco tenso. Aí ele pediu para eu tomar banho. Eu falei, bom, aonde eu vou colocar ele para tomar banho nesse momento? Né? O hotel só libera às 2 horas da tarde. A gente tem diversos encontros, a gente tem almoço, temos alguns clientes para conversar. Eu falei, que tal se você for no lounge da Mastercard, por exemplo, para você... Aí ele me mandou assim de volta, ok. Eu falei, bom, alguma coisa aconteceu. Já estou no táxi. Eu falei, ou ele tomou um banho a jato, ou ele não tomou nada, ficou possesso e veio, né? Foi o que aconteceu. Aí a gente chegou no prédio onde a gente fazia a reunião, eu cheguei e falei, vou achar um banheiro para ele tomar banho. Aí as pessoas gentilmente me cederam, tinha lá um lugar para os funcionários tomarem banho. Claro, você pode utilizar. Mas, gente, não tinha toalha, não tinha sabonete, não tinha nada. Aí ele saiu do banheiro, eu troquei a minha roupa, mas não dava para tomar banho. Afinal, não tem nada de equipamento possíveis para tomar banho, a gente nunca pensa nisso. Mas eu estou trazendo essa história para vocês, porque, assim, quantas vezes a gente não deixa de fazer uma coisa por um detalhe, né? Pensei comigo, toda vez que for encontrar com ele, agora eu levo um equipamento, que é kit de sobrevivência, toalha, sabonete, um chinelinho para poder tomar o banho e, na sequência, dar andamento. Porque, como vocês perceberam, ele é careca, ele raspa a careca porque ele gosta que brilhe a careca na hora que está fazendo a apresentação, porque as fotos saem muito melhores. Então, são algumas coisas, detalhes que você vai sabendo ao trabalhar 2 anos com a pessoa. O que mais? Lial, conta para a gente. Lial, gente, deixa eu contar algumas coisas para vocês. Pois não. Obrigada. Então, deixa eu explicar a minha história. Eu cheguei aqui correndo. Quem pegou a marginal viu que aconteceu alguma coisa, estava absolutamente parada. Não sei, cara, deu tudo errado de manhã. Consegui chegar na hora, então eu cheguei esbaforida ali em cima. Clarissa, vai começar! E aí eu vim correndo. Meu nome é Renata Centurion. Eu sou sócia e diretora para a América Latina da Winning by Design. Eu falei, Clarissa, será que eu falei isso no começo, que eu cheguei correndo? Não falei, né? Então, a gente tem uma equipe aqui no Brasil trabalhando e nós temos várias pessoas em diversos países. Então, hoje, a Winning by Design está presente no Vale do Silício, né, em São Francisco. A gente tem uma equipe grande nos Estados Unidos e a gente chama de West Coast, né, e East Coast, porque a gente tem 2 equipes separadas, trabalhando os clientes de lá, porque é mais fácil para visitar, etc. Depois disso, a gente tem uma equipe na Austrália, tem uma equipe na China, tem uma equipe grande na Europa, então a gente está presente em quase todos os países lá. Se você for conversar com alguma startup belga, provavelmente elas conhecem o Winning by Design, porque todo mundo está trabalhando com o Winning by Design lá, indicação de um para o outro, e a gente está em praticamente todas as startups lá. Que é de onde eu vim, inclusive. Eu trabalhava antes numa startup belga, que foi onde eu fui treinada pela Winning by Design, adorei tudo que eu vi lá e falei, como a gente não tem isso aqui? E aí eu fui atrás deles para a gente trazer para o Brasil. Não, mas Renata, muito obrigada, né? Que bom, feliz que vocês gostaram da gente, mas a gente não vai vir para o Brasil, a gente não tem plano de expansão. Você vê a quantidade de países que a gente está agora. Oi? Alguém fez alguma pergunta? Não. Foi o celular? Aliás, por favor, guardem os celulares, computadores, porque senão vocês vão perder uma coisa interessante aqui na frente. Por que eu falei do Lial? O Lial é particularmente meu mentor aqui no Brasil. O Lial eu conheci através de uma pessoa querida que falou, você precisa conhecer o Lial. Depois eu apresento ele para vocês precisam conhecer ele. O Lial hoje ele está dentro do C6 Bank, né, Lial? A empresa que ele tem, a Ideia 9, é uma empresa de educação corporativa, que tem vários cursos inovadores. Por exemplo, quem aqui já fez curso pelo WhatsApp? Levanta a mão. Pois é. Quando ele falou... Você já fez? O que você achou? Foi da Ideia 9? Não? Nossa, mais inovador ainda, Lial. Que legal. Que legal. Com as crianças ou só as crianças? Que bacana. Por enquanto. Então, e aí, o que aconteceu? Eu conheci o Lial, porque essa pessoa falou, você precisa conhecer. Eu falei, nossa, eu preciso conhecer esse cara, né? E ele está voltando. Até ele chegar aqui, eu vou terminar a história. E aí eu comecei a fazer os cursos da Ideia 9. Uma das primeiros cursos que eu fiz foi um curso que chama Apresentações que Dão Certo. Eu falei, o que pode ter em apresentação que a gente não viu ainda, né? Cara, eu usei todas as dicas que eles deram no curso. Muito obrigada, Lial. Então, sugiro vocês conhecerem o Lial, Ideia 9, depois vocês entram no site. E a Ideia 9 agora está dentro do C6, eles têm uma parceria grande, foram adquiridos pelo C6 Bank, mas tem vários cursos que eles estão fazendo ainda. Se vocês quiserem conversar com ele depois. Fechou? Então, com vocês, nosso Guaraná Man,
Thank you.
Jacco.
Take number 2. Okay, so what I want to share with you today is 3 frameworks on SaaS that you can use in many circumstances. 3 frameworks. What you see down here is the keynote that I gave recently at SaaS Talk. And I want to share this with you because it's one of the more misunderstood concepts in SaaS. I'm going to take you through it. So, if we currently look at SaaS, we can argue it is one of the best inventions that is currently changing the world. And why? Because through the use of SaaS, young entrepreneurs can launch companies that previously were only capable to be launched with the backing of multi-millions of dollars of investments. Nowadays, we can do that and small companies can start. And it is because the cloud and the SaaS as a service business model together enable that. If you think about that, through that, we nowadays see many of these advances in software are essentially coming on the backs of SaaS. What I want to talk about, however, is that the predominant way for SaaS companies to be successful today is to become what they call a unicorn. And during a unicorn, 1 out of 1,000 approximately has a reasonable chance on becoming a unicorn. And that is 1 out of 1,000 who received funding. Obviously, 1 out of 10 to 100,000 if we are looking at companies that are started overall. But only 1 out of 1,000, over 1 of 1,000, only one of them becomes what they call a unicorn. What that means is that for many of you in this room, if not all, for all of us, we're one of the remaining 999,099. They also have a term for us. The term in Silicon Valley is referred to this as the walking dead. these are companies that have created enough revenue that they won't die out, but they are essentially waiting for some activation to take place, although it will never be one of becoming suddenly very valuable company. It's a walking dead. I was responsible for one of those walking dead called Kumu, not to be misunderstood with Kubo, but Kumu. And Kumu was one of those clients that when I took on behalf of the VC, they simply wanted to ditch the company and to spin it back out. Now, what you find is that most companies become a walking dead because of a few very basic reasons. Those basic reasons I want to explain to you so you can design your way around it. Now, if you don't do this, then there's a variety of phases that you're going to see that startups in generally go to. Then the first phase that you're going to see, the first phase you're going to see is that in generally we are doing an acqui-hire is one of them, where the company gets acquired for its people. We can sell the IP, the remaining intellectual property can be sold. And at the last spot, the last potential moment, we're even selling the furniture inside the company. We're selling everything dependent on its state of decay. Now, obviously, we want to make sure that we avoid that, and so what we have to do is the following. Now, what you see down here is that many people like me are standing in front of many audience like you, and we profess that we may know something. And all I can tell you is like, look, I can only share you with what the knowledge that I have for today. That doesn't make me, like an absolute guru or something like that. I'm not. I'm an expert, but I'm not a guru. I'm not a Jedi is another word that I often hear, right? No, I'm not a Jedi. But I'm an expert, and what I mean with expert is I do every year between 30 to 100 companies that I help, right? And over the years, over the past, I think I've well over 1,000 companies helped. And so what that means is I recognize a particular pattern. And one thing I can only tell you is, as I give you my advice and counsel today, is that is my advice and counsel of the knowledge I have today. But we are constantly revising and updating it. It is under these circumstances that I tell you, you may have 10 takeaway points today. 7 of those key takeaways will help your company become extremely successful, and the other 3 may kill your company. So you have to figure out which one applies to you. What I do find is as good advice is we live in a world where no longer the loudest voice should be warranted as the most valuable voice. And what I mean with the loudest voice is you see him on social media, you see him many places. People today can create quite a coverage by simply publishing their content and so on. We're always looking for you. Be aware of whose content you're digesting and you're looking to. Okay, let's start. There are 3 specific issues that I'm going to talk about. The number 1 issue is go-to-market model, data-driven, and process. These are the 3 topics. Starting with the first part that you're going to see down here, this particular picture relates to what we call the go-to-market model. And the go-to-market model is, it goes through several stages. Now, I'm going to ask for your help. Does anybody know what MVP stands for? Give me a name. What does it stand for? Yes. Give me the name. MVP stands for? Minimal viable product. And since you're in seconds, let me see. There you go. Minimal viable product. Can you explain to me a little bit what it does? What does it mean, approximately?
Well, it's a proof of concept where you have the minimum
viable product. It's a product that works,
yes.
Right? It's the first product that works. Great. Now, do you also know what does PMF stand for?
I don't.
Product market fit. And what does that mean approximately? What do we do with product market fit? What does that give us approximately?
You have a lot of people looking for your
Okay, now what we have for product market fit, essentially people are willing to pay money for it. There is some financial exchange going. There's not hundreds, but there may be 10, 20, 30 amount of clients. And so what you see that product market fit is that you're starting to establish what your price is, but you can't scale it yet. Now the third one, go to market fit, this is where we start to scale. And if you sell a platform, this is suddenly where we start to send, say, like we get 100, 300 kind of clients. As we come out of go to market fit, we're probably having a range of 200 to 300 platform clients. If we're selling seats, then the measurements of course are different. And so if you're selling seats, you're probably product market fit, we're talking about like 5,000, 10,000 kind of users, go to market fit, 20,000, 30,000 individual subscribers. These are the indicators of that. Then at the bottom, you see the approximation of funding rounds. At the beginning, we see take money from anybody you can get, probably that's from your family members and from friends that will never call you friends afterwards, right? Then we have seed stage, an independent wealthy person, probably 2 or 3 are starting to put in the range of $20,000, $50,000 into you. And then as you go to your A round, often anywhere from $1 million or $500,000 up to $2, $3, $4, $5 million. It can be big, 10 million. But your B round often is in most cases somewhere between $5 and $20 million. Now, what you'll see is you see that little squiggly line. In that squiggly line, I am winning customers and I'm losing customers. And what happens is it takes you approximately in that losing customers, you get your first batch of clients that you now started to lose because they're coming at the end of a year. And that is common because you promised them the moon when you built the product, and suddenly they come to the realization that it ain't happening. And so they simply are moving away from your product, and that's okay. There's nothing to be worried about. That's quite fine. You're going to lose 20 to 30% of your customers in that phase often. So you're going to get the squiggly line. Now, in this case, you're going to get a round B, and your round B is going to be nice. It's going to be, let's say, a $5 to $10 million round. Reasonable money that I can do with. What am I going to do with? I'm the CEO of the company, or in this case, you are all the CEO of the company. You get $10 million. What are you going to spend the $10 million on? Okay, I know it. The ping pong table. Great, we got the ping pong table. Okay, check. What are we spending the rest of the money on? People. What kind of people? What is the kind of people that we're going to hire and go to market fit stage? Salespeople. We're going to hire salespeople. We're going to want to increase the sales. Now, salespeople need leads. So what should we also start getting? In addition to sales, we should get also another part of the organization. Marketing. So now we get marketing and sales. And so right in that B round, what we're going to see, if we hire more marketing and sales, we're going to see that that squiggly line is going to amplify if we do not know what we're doing. It's going to go way bigger because simply what I'm doing, I'm bringing on more people, marketing and sales, to do more of what I already was doing. And if I see what I was doing this. So now I'm going to go do this. It's a very common reaction. And so what you're going to find is we need to avoid that. Now, what you see the little text bubbles is essentially the key things that VCs are investing in that point. So first thing is an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, when Tehi, who was the chairman of Marketo, of the board, when he launched, when John Miller, who was the CEO of Marketo, came to Tehi at Storm Ventures and said, like, I'm launching a new company. Of course, Tehi just made, Storm made lots of money on Marketo, and they say, of course, John. And John was launching what nowadays is known as Engagio, of course. Tehi invests in the entrepreneur. Now, if Tehi now says, like John, like, what else are you coming for further on rounds? John says, I'm bringing with me some of the best people of Marketo. Now what we're seeing, A round, the team is what we're investing in. Do we have qualified engineers on the board? Do we have like people with a pedigree in engineering capacity? Doesn't have to be an experience. Pedigree could also be top-notch university material. And so further on, traction is essentially where we're starting to invest in, are we winning accounts? Can we compete for business and are we winning them? And then further on, revenue process, can we scale it? And then the last one is it economically feasible? Are you actually able to make a significant amount of profit on this? These are your 5 steps that you're investing in as a VC. And different VCs find different use. You have VCs like Storm that does a real good A round, you have Emergence Capital that does B round, or down here, you have Redpoint is a renowned VC down here that sits right around that A and B round as well, can go all the way up to D rounds. But sometimes you have VCs that are just doing A round or seed rounds. So that's a little bit of this picture, and what you see the downward spiral starts right at the end of go-to-market fit. This is where essentially your course is being set. And what we need to do is we need to figure out right at that traction point, we need to figure out what can we fix. Now, this is framework 1. In framework 1, we need to know where our product is at. I may have a client, and this client, let's say has about 10,000 customers in the SMB space, in the small to medium market space. So 10,000 people, they are well in revenue and process round. That's where they're at. Now they're launching an enterprise business. But what many companies do when they launch an enterprise business is they essentially think, hey, I am already I'm in that stage, revenue process, in that rapid growth stage right now. And we go like, no. When you spin off a different business, you can't assume that that business is already in an advanced stage. You say enterprise needs to go all the way back to minimum viable product. Does my product, is it capable of addressing the enterprise need? Now, obviously, we're not going to go through that same stage in the 2 years. It may only take 3 to 6 months, but you have to go through that same stage all over again in order for you to become successful. And as soon as you enter go-to-market, you're going to learn that an enterprise product sells very, very differently compared to an SMB product. SMB product generally sells high velocity, whereas an enterprise product, multiple approval processes, security processes, and so on and so forth, takes a longer time. Framework 1. What we see today is that this go-to-market fit stage is the biggest bottleneck for people to get through. In order to do, I want you to see the main traction. It's right on the line, so it's hard to see, but there's an arrow right on that center line. And that says, we can no longer wait for process and unit economics to be only considered later on. You have to work those stages in today. If you're in go-to-market fit stage, you have to bring in process and you have to bring in unit economics in the go-to-market fit stage. This is no longer a nice to have, or this is no longer something that just happens in Silicon Valley. This happens all across the world. And it primarily comes from the following, that SaaS services are no longer an exception. Many companies are already buying SaaS services. They may have 50 to 100 SaaS products. You're no longer like, oh my gosh, it's a new cool thing we're going to invest in. It's just, you're one of the products. There may always be exceptions in vertical markets, I get that, but overall we see that this is a requirement. Second framework. In this framework, I'm going to map 4 marketing models and 5 sales models. Now, in this particular stage, I'm going to describe each one of them. On this side down here, advice to oneself. If you have a red dot, do not make the slide red. As we can see following the red dot, okay. So, strategic sales on the far right. Strategic sales is when we are selling, a salesperson only manages 1 to 3 accounts, not more. It's like I used to be the strategic account sales guy on behalf of VeriSign to all of Disney. My proposal that I was making had nothing to do with a $100,000 proposal. That was a $50 million account plan that I wrote. It was a $50 million that VeriSign proposed to Disney. And it wasn't even considered a huge deal. It was an average size deal. That is what strategic sales is about. Huge volume of deals, but generally applied to a handful, 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 accounts. Often, strategic salespeople live extremely close to the account. They have dinners, they can easily travel back and forth to social things that are happening, they don't have to fly in there, and so on and so forth. Really, in the SaaS world, we do not see a lot of strategic salespeople. They are, if we do see them, it's like to Google for the marketplace, to Salesforce. You know, it's primarily focused on a partnership arrangement, not on a sales arrangement. Field sales, however, is what we start to see. If you have a product that sells in the high ACVs, high dollar figures, then in generally you have a dedicated sales force, a person that gets on an airplane, flies to the customer, and meets with the customer. They fly back, but in your case, we may have like 3 or 4 field sales forces. We may have one in Belo Horizonte, we may have one in Sao Paulo, we may have one in Brasilia, but where there may be a few sales offices that operate in the region. Again, we see it more often, but still not the most common. Where most of all the SaaS sales takes place is product-led growth, 1 stage and 2 stage. In 2 stage, as you may well know, SDR, sales development rep, calls up on a client, sets up a meeting for the account executive. We call that meeting the discovery call. 2 stage. Set a meeting, AE performs the meeting. 2 people are associated with the account. 1 is doing all the work getting the lead, the other one is following up. 2 stage. As the price gets lower, it is really hard to pay 2 people in order to do this. It gets too expensive. So below the 2 stage, we have a 1 stage. There's a separate term for that, an inside sales rep, an ISR, which is essentially a person who sits in the office and does nothing but with Zoom and phone and email sell the entire day, an inside sales rep. This inside sales rep and the difference between a 1 stage and a 2 stage, you can always find that by asking, can I do a demo? Can I see a demo? If the seller cannot perform the demo right away because they have to set you up with a sales manager, then you generally are dealing with a 2-stage sales organization. If the person on the phone says, yes, let's step through a demo right away, then in generally you are dealing with a 1-stage sales organization. The difference between the two primarily are dictated whether your what your price point of your product is, combined with whether you have an inbound or an outbound model, which I'm going to address in a second. At the bottom, or at the furthest to the left, what we see is we have product-led growth. And what product-led growth is, really your customers are acting and behaving as the marketing and sales engine. And so one of the most successful product-led growth products today is called Superhuman in the US. I am their marketing and sales organizations because everywhere I go, I speak about them as an example. And I tell them how great my email is, you know, and so on. It's an email automation tool or an email productivity tool, and it really helps me process emails a lot faster. But for example, if any of you sends me an email, says, hey, I heard you talk about Superhuman, could you refer me, because you cannot get in unless you go through a person. Simply you sending me an email, all I have to do is command KR, and as a shortcut key, it immediately picks up your email address from your email and sends you in the process. They have optimized their product to make sure that the referral can be sent easily. Pure product-led growth. Anybody who is interested in that, you have to follow Gaurav, who's the CEO of that company. He is already, but if not, he soon will be one of the world leaders on this topic of product-led growth. Product-led growth, high velocity. What we're talking about is probably you have thousands and thousands of customers. You're thinking about like 50, 100, 250,000 customers to get started in early stages. If you go to field sales, you're probably winning 30, 40 deals a year, 50 deals a year. And if you go 1 stage, 2 stage, you're probably winning 100 to 200 deals a year. Okay, so this is that framework. Now, what we see in this framework, we see a few common mistakes being made. This is an example of a client who did who I'm currently engaged with. And what we see down here, their ACV, annual contract value, sits right around $6,000. And so you see that lighten area, you see where they're supposed to be in. Now, what we see is they're supposed to map out 1-stage sales organization, potentially with some product-led growth. And they're dealing primarily with an inbound marketing machine. You see the 4 inbound steps: inbound, outbound, targeting, and referral. Those are the 4 marketing motions that we're having. Inbound, obviously, very directly correlated to content. My content out there spreads the gospel. People come back and hit my website. Very inbound driven. Now, inbound driven with a 1 stage is often like a chatbot, like a drift bot or an intercom that picks up the conversation and processes the customer through. In this case, they have, in this particular client's case, inbound, chat online, non-active. Their competitors, very active on chatbot. They don't have any. In other words, they need to capture the email, then they need somebody, an SDR, need to follow up on an email, thank you for inbound, and need to see if they can get the customer for a demo call. Obviously, if we had an online chat, that demo could have not only be scheduled, it could actually already have held right then and there through that. So in this case, clear advice, hey, you may need to do that. What instead they were doing is they were deploying a 2-stage sales organization, and they looked at starting and opening up a brand new office in a lower cost market for lower salaries in order for them to do that. Obviously, at this point in time, Winning by Design got involved, and we go like, hang on, let's hold the horses, stop the hiring. I can already quickly see that this is not the right approach. And so as of today, we just went through this account. As this account immediately stopped all the processes, and they're renaming everybody called an inside sales rep. They're automating and they're going to the chatbot function. Look, more than welcome to spend $50,000 on us. It is this simple. Pick your price, pick which marketing and sales model you have in that. Now, the difference between the 3 marketing models down here is outbound, targeting, and referral. Outbound, one-to-many, means I have an SDR team that is sending emails by the hundreds, if not thousands, every month. That means that you have to have a market size that you're calling on in the size of a couple of 100,000. If you're not, then that is going to chew up your market in a matter of months. And so you've got to be very careful. One-to-many is extremely fatiguing and could be brand torpedoing. The other challenge that the one-to-many model has, it gives you the false sense that you actually are accomplishing something, but by the time you hire 5 more SDRs to do it and 10 more AEs, that machine simply won't deliver that. It was very effective to do that for the first 50 to 100 because you were chewing through so quickly. But once it starts to really, you put skill to it, it doesn't work like that anymore. That means that for most, they need to start applying a form of targeting. The difference between outbound one-to-many and targeting is in outbound one-to-many, I see each of you as a different owner of a company, and I address each of you, one person in one account, and I move on to the next account. If I go one to few, I see, hey, there's 3 people from the same company down here. Maybe instead of addressing everybody all at once, maybe I should just focus on this particular company. Now, I also know that if I focus all my resources on a particular company, and let's say I want to go after the CEO, as soon as as I address the CEO may go to the VP of Finance and say, like, have you heard about that? And the VP of Finance may go to the Director of Finance and says, have you heard about them? If that is happening, that means I need to orchestrate in time. I need to reverse engineer it. So I may ask first, my Director of Finance may first invite them over to a webinar. I may send some invitation to a disco call to the VP of Finance, and then I may eventually send the CEO a book. Now, if I address these 3 people and I spread it out over a year, then those connection points will not matter. So I combine them in about a 2 to 3 week time frame. So when we ping them in the right sequence with each other, we start to have a conversation on their side. That is targeting, and because of the complexity involved in it, we only do a few, and a few as in 100, for example, instead of like 5,000. The last one is referral, and referral is exactly what it says. If when I called on Disney, a friend of mine was the CTO of Disney, the moment in time he introduced me into ESPN, he wrote the message for me to the CTO of Disney, of ESPN, saying, hey, I'm sending Jacco over, come meet with him. That is purely one-to-one referral. Those are 4 marketing models mapped to 5 sales models. There are more. I'm just using the overall trends to keep it simple. In this, you see the example of a right client and a wrong client. I'll stop there, I'll take a sip of a drink, and anybody has a question, this could be a good time for you to ask a question. Yeah, I see this quietness happens all the time, but I have a trick for that. I'm going to give you 30 to 60 seconds to talk to each other on a valid question that you need to ask. So it is ideal if you don't talk to the person that you came with, but if you talk to the person that sits a row below, up from you, turn around, meet a new person, introduce yourself, and then say, hey, what's clear, what's not clear, and then maybe we can ask a few questions around that. Ready, set, 60 seconds. Here we go. Okay. Yes, my friend. Thank you. Thank you. Questions? Yes. I am not throwing the microphone. I've done that. I've seen there's dents in it, but he doesn't like that when I throw the microphone.
Hey, Jacco,
Yes.
quick one. Isn't your model somewhat tied to the type of product or service that you're selling?
Of course, yes.
For instance, imagine that we're talking about, let's say, industrial products, right? And that you have, kind of an industrial gadget product that you're selling. This is typically more of a strategic field sales type of a engagement, right? But I imagine that you are looking to a market where you have contract values that are, I don't know, below 15,000, right? So, of course, that you have to balance that, right? And how would you go by doing that type of balancing?
So first and foremost, the kind of sales process is always dictated by the buying process. And so, for example, if you have larger companies with multiple purchasing hurdles, it has to be kicked up, that will have a different buying process because we know that somebody needs to go through the process. For example, security industry. If we will be selling a security product, in many cases they want to see an on-site demo of some sort, so an online demo won't work. So in this case, the product that you're selling may dictate a particular service. Where this applies really well is the lion's share of all products, which are marketing, selling to marketing, sales, finance departments, which are commonly, like you can sell it via an online demo. The moment in time that you have to visit a client, you have to realize that your client acquisition costs are going up. And SaaS was not invented for that. SaaS was not invented to be sold at low dollar values and your costs are going up. You need to figure out if that is the right thing for you to do. If you're selling a 5,000 reais annual service and you got to fly 3 times to it from here to Belo Horizonte to make the sale, then most likely you're not going to have a profitable account. Your go-to-market model will not work. And so you have to be very conscious of that. If that happens, it is not uncommon to see that the SaaS service includes an upfront fee, which we call a setup fee or a consulting fee or something like that. But it involves a fee up front. The most renowned version of this is the much dreaded proof of concept that is commonly found in enterprise sales. The proof of concept is essentially an idea from the past when I was selling Cisco routers, where they're saying, hey, we're going to buy the routers, it's pretty sure, but you got to make sure it works with my existing system. And so the proof of concept does exactly what the words say. The only thing, the sale is done, you just got to prove that it works and the deal is done. What we see today is that people think that that is still applicable, but you can't do that when the cost of the product is only 10% of what it used to be. And so we got to think about it in a different way. So today, under those contracts, where we cannot longer do proof of concept, we rather say to the client, buy the product and you have 90 days, no questions asked to return. Because for me to actually run this entire process for you is going to be too expensive. And so you solve that simply in your sales terms. Obviously, not every customer can go for it, but this is the challenge, and this is where we often advise companies. You have to determine. If you cannot sell it at the price, then you have a problem. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next question. By the way, if you think, this is literally how I'm nervous, not nervous, but this is the amount of energy. I will run that stairs up 20 times today. So this is my way of getting my energy in. Go for it, sir.
Hi, thanks. I would like to know more about strategic sales and why referral is the most used channel.
Yes, so in strategic sales, I'm primarily winning huge accounts, like big ones. I'm winning big deals. And in big deals, in generally, I do not want to go enter at a low level. The reason is, if I go at a low level, and let's say I deal with this gentleman, let's say that he's the administrator or something like that, and by the time I now go to his boss, he's not going to like that. And so he doesn't want me to go to his boss. So what I got to do is I got to wine and dine him for 3 months, so him and I are close enough buddies that I can go to the boss. Then I go to the boss, who reports into the next level, the vice president. That's going to take me another 3 to 6 months. And so by the time I get to the decision maker in this process, it's going to take me 12 to 18 months. Then I talk to the CEO, sitting there, let's say at the end of the row, and the CEO says to me, you know what, we're never going to buy your service because of reason X, Y, Z. And I go like, could you not have told me that in the beginning? I just spent 18 months of sales cycle. And this is the challenge of the strategic sale. The way to overcome that is to have an existing customer that you have, or existing friend of the family. Somebody you already know, and the other day, Renata's friend, her female friend is married to a person who heads up whatever, McDonald's University. That's a great referral. Go straight in there, right? That works that way. If you got to work up this way, it is just an awfully long trajectory to take. That's the reason why you go for referral. Next question. Going once? Going twice? Yes. Yes. Da, 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 da. There you go.
How do you set your strategy? Better question. Do you set a different strategy for different markets to approach the customers?
When you call markets, what is a market to you?
Finance, retail.
You can.
At the segment.
It can happen if the buying process is radically different. Then it can, but it also needs to have a different price. Then, what is more common is that your SMB will sell, let's say, in a one stage. Your mid-market may sell on a 2-stage, and your enterprise higher product will sell at a field sales model. That is more common to see. So you can have multiple sales organizations. Okay. What we see down here is the same solution, but now we see a different problem. And this problem now relates to a client sells at about $78,000 average contract value. And in that $78,000, I would expect them to have a field sales organization and a targeting / what they call ABM, account-based marketing plan. We walk in, this is an account that's currently live, actually is being trained today in Las Vegas. We walk into this account, and guess what this account has? it has a two-stage SDR AE organization to sell. They're selling to C-level, and they, and at C-level, what most of this particular sale is a highly data-driven, move from the cloud, move from an on-prem server to the cloud. Very technical sale for which they use a sales engineer. As we see down here, their two-stage sales organization won't work because the SDR who's calling, who needs to sell to the CTO of the company, as soon as the CTO picks up the phone and starts the conversation, the SDR is immediately outgunned by the level of technical expertise. And so there is no meaningful conversation other than, do you want to meet with me? And the CTO says, well, I do not know, what do you do? And the CTO asks one or two questions, and there is no conversation. The SDR is, for very good reason, this is not their fault, is incapable of having a meaningful conversation with the client, which is very technically driven. Do you support IEEE 802.333? No, what is he talking about? And so, in this case, obviously what we need to do there is we need to have and focus our marketing organization. What we noticed that the marketing organization was doing is they were producing 2,000 leads, MQLs, every month. This company wins a maximum amount of 40 deals a year. They don't need 2,000 leads every month. That's 24,000 leads a year to convert into 40 wins. That is not the right these two things are not correctly aligned. So what we see down here, wrong marketing process, wrong sales process, and as they move to, and as they have a sales engineering team, they're moving more towards the field sales organization. Okay, these are a few examples of where it goes right and wrong. Now, next model, data-driven. This model, for those of you who've read the book, have seen this before in many cases, but I just want to take you through it one more time for everybody who hasn't seen it. Traditionally, we think of as follows. In order to generate twice as much sales, any VP of sales will say, well, I need twice as many leads. Or they say, I need twice as many salespeople because, in order to do that, therefore I need twice as many leads. Or they say, I need twice the price. I need to sell at a higher price. In other words, twice the wins require twice the input. This is very common, and most VPs of sales will fight that battle every day. However, when we look at it, we understand that your machine, your SaaS machine, doesn't work like that. The SaaS machine historically is a model that is based on what we call the land and expand model. But that plus sign in the middle is something that we are still holding close and dear to our heart. What we are doing today is that with each of these, we create siloed organization, which we measure each organization on what we call a volume metric. How many prospects? How many visitors to the website? How many MQLs were generated? How many SQLs were generated? And so what we do with volume metrics is we add things up. This additive behavior does not correctly reflect the business. It also creates a very siloed nature, where marketing is only responsible for looking at the MQLs. However, if we take a closer look, and we see essentially what is going on, we see that today there's a maniacal focus, an absolute maniacal focus, primarily by the alphas in the sales organization, to keep winning more deals. They want to keep winning more deals. And at this point in time, the deal flow should be automated and process-driven. It should not be the main objective of the company anymore. Maniacal focus on winning new logos is one of the most common mistakes that we see in sales organizations. What we see, however, is that if you look at your machine, your SaaS machine, it is a process in which one creates consequence next, creates a consequence next. This is a purely model that if you look at it from an engineering perspective, it seems to be pretty reasonable. For those of you who know a little about gears, that first gear is a worm wheel. That twist has a high frequency, and as it makes 1,000 rounds per minute, the next motion only is one click. And so what you see down here is, in generally, not an additive world. It is not where I keep adding things up. It's a multiplication word. I multiply constantly. This means that we're no longer talking about volume metrics, but of interest mathematically, I'm interested in conversion metrics. X, if I how many leads do I need to get to the next stage? I multiply things. Now, what you'll see is if I use that multiplication, and in this case, in a high velocity, I'll take 1,000 leads, and I start converting them, then in this case, I get an ARR number out of that. If I look at what that number is, that is $25,000. Now, that comes from 1,000 times 12% times 70% and so on and so forth. I multiply that, and you see the ACV over there is $12,000. I take 20% off, so I multiply it by 80%, and this formula adds up to $25,000 in new revenue. However, if I make a small improvement, a minor improvement all along the line, what I'm going to do, slightly add it up. Instead of 1,000 leads, I'm going a 10% improvement to 1,100. Instead of a 12% conversion rate, I'm going to 40% conversion rate. Now, these conversion improvements are approximately 10 to 15% all across the board. They're marginal. But what we're creating with this marginal improvement is essentially what they call an exponential impact. $48,000. It's close enough to be considered 2x, and what we see is approximately a 10% improvement across your entire line has a 2x outcome. This is pure math. There's nothing complicated. It's not even like we're not talking about differentiation or anything. This is like multiply, multiply, multiply equates to an exponential impact. And essentially it comes out to the formula, 10% improvement, 1.1 to the power of 7 equals 2x. 10% improvement, you get that too. You get the same 2x. Instead of doubling your leads, all we needed to do is 10% improvement. This misunderstanding is commonly found in a world where alphas want to win more logos, for which they want to win more leads, and so they are actually going through it in a very ineffective and an inefficient manner. When we apply that to enterprise selling, where I have to win 20 deals a year, that works quite fine. But if I have to win 1,000 deals a year, my alpha behavior will essentially start to have an adverse impact on my sales. They need to chew through too much in order to get and hit the target and to keep hitting the target. Not only that, if I further apply it, there is a different engine if you have a monthly recurring revenue stream or you have a consumption model, and that is that of compound impact. I will not embarrass you any longer. I have done that in the past so much I won't do it again, not you necessarily, but other people in the audience. It's not recommended. Never insult your audience. It's just not a good thing. And so what it comes down to is what is the difference between exponential impact and compound impact? And a lot of founders who are running a SaaS model have a hard time understanding that. Exponential impact happens once. X to the power of y gets you the win. It happens once. Compound impact is what you experience when you buy a car, or, I did not know this, so yesterday, I'm not displaying wealth, I'm just displaying the weirdest behavior I had yesterday ever at the Hugo Boss store. I'm buying a belt, and I needed the belt. Yeah, I see Renato already sitting like this. I'm buying a belt. I wear Hugo Boss. So I go to the Hugo Boss store. Why? Because it all fits. It mixes and matches. I don't want to have to worry about, does this color fit with that color? Hugo Boss figures that out. So I just buy all Hugo Boss. Simple, like, get the idea? So I buy a belt. By the way, I didn't know how much the belt was until the credit card machine operated. Fucking belt was 670 reais. I'm not the only one who thinks that's expensive, right? I'm like, fuck, like, holy smokes, man. Okay. Anyway, I'm like digesting that. She's looking at me. I'm like, okay, anyway, I need a belt. Otherwise, we need to shop around anywhere else. I'll take it. Digest it. Don't worry about it. It's American dollars. It's cheaper. And the dudeski behind says to me, 1 payment, 2 payment, 3 payment, 4 payment. And I'm going like, what the fuck? What do you mean? You're like, is there an option no payment? And he goes like, he starts laughing. He says, how do you want to pay? I'm like, hugs? Like, true, right? And I see him negotiating with, can he do hugs? That's what I thought and she said, no, no, he's not pretty enough. And so, no hugs for me. And so, but anyway, I later on understand I can, of course, pay in separate payments, which is, this is the only country in the world that does that. This is how expensive the world has gotten to you, that you now buy a belt and they have payments on it. Like, anyway, point being is those payments, not in this case, because Hugo Boss clearly makes enough money, but at lower, they put an interest on that. That interest is based on compound impact. A little bit of interest compounded over a huge amount of cycles, for example, a 20-year mortgage on a house, a 60-month payment on a car, compounds extremely well. Compound impact happens again and again and again and again. Small improvement on compound impact is even more powerful. Well, x to the power of 7, 10% improvement over 7 measurement points is great. If I have an average life cycle of 36 months, a 1% improvement per month to the power of 36 is wealth. Is incredible wealth. This is where Slack and Zoom and all the companies that you have come to love all across the world, this is why they are so successful. They run on that compound impact engine. Now, what we see down here is a traditional model, scalable model for platform sales. And what we see down here is the cost that we allocate. So I'll try to explain the first part. If I close a $20,000 real deal annually, and I promise you, if you pay me 2,000, if you give me 2,000 reais, I guarantee give you a win. If I give you a lead, I guarantee you this lead will close. I guarantee it at 20,000 reais. Would you be willing to pay me 10% if I guarantee you a win? Of course, that's the only answer I would love to hear. Thank you very much. Sometimes I'm in an audience they're going like, no, and I, dude, this was of course, yes, here, how many? Can I keep buying, right? And so 10% is a common cost, what we call cost per lead. Now, I can't pay that because the lead still needs to convert. So if I, for example, if I need to get from a lead to a win on an average of 4%, from a lead to a win, I convert on average between 2 to 4%. In this case, I'll use 2% because that's 50. That means 1 in 50 leads converts. If I now pay you $2,000 per lead, that essentially means I need to divide the 2,000 divided by 50 is $40 per lead I'm now willing to pay them. As long as it converts at 1 in 50, that means I'm paying 2,000, and if the annual contract value holds up at 20,000, this math works. This is how you calculate cost per lead. 10% now goes to the cost per lead. We can now compare our marketing campaigns. Are we over or are we under? Does it make sense? Same thing is client acquisition cost. Client acquisition cost is where we add up the people who are working on that deal on a year, the SDR, sales development rep, the sales manager, and potentially the onboarder. In case of a platform, there's a person who needs to onboard that. We add those costs up, and what we say is the cost of those 3 people, annualized salaries, cannot exceed the annualized revenue that they bring in place. If they do that, it's a non-scalable business. That doesn't mean that if you're in that zone, that you're in a bad zone yet. It just means that you and your VC have agreed that they keep funding that for the time being until you become profitable. You just want to run and know where you're at. Am I getting closer to there or am I moving away? It is quite okay to operate at 50, 60% if you have a plan over the next 18 months to get to 40%. When you start calculating this, and normally I do this on a whiteboard and we use an example of one of yours, the difference between an SDR, sales development rep, doing 10 SQLs per month or 15 SQL per month is the difference between being at 40% and being at 50%. The difference between a salesperson winning on average 1 in 3 deals versus 1 in 4 deals is the difference between being in the safe zone at 40% or being completely out in the boonies at 60%. This is how narrow in this math is running. Many of you who run sales organizations experience this but do not know where it comes from, as you feel that you're razor thin on the margins constantly. This is where that model comes from. Underneath, the math is quite easy to understand, but once you calculate it out, you will see constantly that the numbers need to add up. If it doesn't, then you're still in that squiggly line stage. You haven't found go-to-market fit yet. You're selling at too high of a cost to go scaling. Because as soon as you then pump that machine up, you're going to explode in the amount of people that you need. The problem with that, on top of it, is that we were yesterday at one of Estella's portfolio companies. What we see over there then is suddenly people come and say, I need to hire 20 SDRs. Well, if you already have 20 SDRs and you need to hire another 20 more, now I got 40 SDRs, of which 10% is going to leave in the next 3 months, of which 10% is going to actually probably be a mishire, maybe more like 20%. Now what I'm becoming a recruiting firm that does nothing but recruit, and train. And so now this whole model of an ineffective machine is becoming way more ineffective and efficient because there's way more overhead that you need to do. It only gets worse after this, not better. That's why you got to stick with the 40% before you hit scale. The last step, cost to serve, says 20% need to be serviced to the customer success organization. I'm going to address this in a second because there's a big kaboom in a second that comes out of there, and then this 20% is going to make sense. So I'm going to hold that off that. Before I go on from this one, any questions on this? Addictive. I swear, like, I started this morning, I'm not kidding, I walked to the fridge, open up, thank you, good morning, Juana. Are you waving hi, or you want a hug, or is that 10 minutes? Okay, I thought it was a hug. What we see with a closed loop system, product-led growth creates what we call a closed loop system. This makes compound impact even better. If we now have a closed loop system, everything starts to work beautifully. And what you see down here is closed loop systems do not only have to go from the beginning to the end, there's closed loop systems that can go anywhere, upgrade. You know, when you go on Slack, or if I don't know, many of you are probably on Google Suites, and you know how easy it is to just add a member. Like, they made it so easy that you don't have to worry about it. Imagine that every time you have to add and remove, remember, think of that, every time you have to add a member, you have to call somebody up. And if you have to remove a member, you have to go through a process, can I get the validation code, you contracted for X, like it would be madness. And so you see these closed loop systems are everywhere, and in generally, like I said before, happy clients act as your best marketing and sales channels. Last step. I now want to start depicting what we can do with process. Now, down here I have Matt Wensing. I asked for his approval, and he was happily to say yes to this. But in this particular case, he said, things I am not going to do in my next startup. There's several points that he points out down here, to which I agree all but one. For me, I have a co-founder in Dominique, and she's nowadays co-CEO. I have to tell you, this company would not be what it is without a co-founder. Yesterday, the company were asked, they were 4 co-founders, and I asked the CEO the same thing. I believe, are you familiar with the 1 to 1,000 dislike ratio? Okay, that gives me an opportunity to explain it. It takes about 1,000 likes for a normal human being to overcome 1 dislike. Everybody is sensitive to a dislike, way more, to the tune of 1,000 to 1 to the likes. Same thing is with co-founders. Everybody is so more in tune with the failure that the 999 who actually have a pretty good, solid co-founder relationship, the one horror story that you hear every now and then, is make everybody shy. Co-founders, for me, is one really critical item to become a successful startup, because there's a lot of conversations and balancing you need to have. So aside from that, Matt talks about all the other stuff, but I'm picking out on his results over process. I'll pick in particular a sentence. The rewarding results produced by a bad or non-existent process is a failure because you aren't developing repeatability at its best, and at worst, a blind eye to toxic actions. This is literally what we run into, like almost in companies, okay? Founders need not to think of process as something for big companies. Finding a scalable and repeatable process is the goal of starting, and he calls founders are process architects. Obviously, with the developer, the Dutch developer in the room that I just got to know, I'm telling you, the whole nature of the word architect and scaling a business is exactly what we need to be doing. If we're scaling, we need an architect. It doesn't matter, we can be, Winning by Design can be that architect, that's fine. You don't need to have us, but somebody needs to be doing it. Okay, and so what I draw down here is an example of what a process looks like. I got 2 rates down here. At the bottom, I got the SDR handoff rate. This is a 2-stage sales organization. The handoff rate means 85% of the people that a call got set up actually showed up. The remaining 50% didn't even bother. Okay? And on the left, the win rate from that is 20%. So now what we see, 20% of those people actually became a win. Now in this case, I'm going to depict the following scenario. I'm going to say it's like, hey, if I am far below, if my win rate is 10% and my SDR is not generating enough leads, and in this case, the handoff rate is 60%, so a lot of people are not showing up, we probably need to stop looking at what we're currently doing. We probably are not fishing in the right pond, so to speak. And often what we describe down here is you need to stop looking for clients who are a fit, and you need to start looking for clients who have a pain. I'll give you an example of car tires. Down here, people are selling tires in the city to cars, and the car people go like, dude, I don't need a new tire. But if you're going to sell on a pain, you may be going to the mountains where there's snow, and now I'm selling snow tires to people who are going into the snow. That's people with a pain. One, there's plenty of. I got plenty of people in the city with cars, but none of them wants to buy a tire. But if I know to go to the mountains, although the group is fewer, I am strategically positioning it on pain rather than on fit. Now, if I see like, hey, the AE rate actually is, like the handoff is really, really bad, but the win rate is really, really good. So now what we can say is like, hey, what is going on down here? This commonly, when the AE rate is going so high, most likely what they're doing is they're telling your SDRs, don't you even dare giving me a lead unless I can close it. So they're holding off. They're squeezing the pipeline on that side. If I see on this side, like the SDRs are really just literally throwing everything at it, like everybody's converting, but the win rate is very low, then probably the SDRs needs a certain training. And then the final part is if we say, hey, win rate successful and handoff rate successful, hey, we're scalable. In this case, I can have 4 different processes that can address this. The right way of doing this is as follows. You first and foremost need to establish a data framework that we're going to measure. You need to use benchmarks, not benchmarks for what happens in America and Silicon Valley, benchmarks what happens in the security market in Brazil. This is an example. Then you calculate based on that, what is your best go-to-market model to achieve that 40%, and then you create a process to implement that. You know what? The first time you do this, you're going to be wrong. But you're going to be able to figure out where you go wrong because you made an assumption, and you're going to adjust the assumption. This is the idea of when you create scalability. As Edison did it with his light bulbs, I need to know which 9,999 didn't work so I can find which one doesn't. This is the reason why there are so many walking dead. Because we are not doing this, and so everybody keeps running into the same wall, and we go there like, yes, the previous 900 companies ran into that same wall, and that wall is you're using a 2-stage sales organization, which is extremely expensive, to win very few accounts right now, and it's just too expensive. You can't scale that. And then they go like, yes, but I'm going to get 20 million funding. I'm like, yes, but you're going to probably lose your VP of sales. Your stocks are going to dilute pretty quickly as soon as the CEO, the VCs take over. What we see with this is that if you look at it, I earlier said, is it SaaS that is the revolution? And it's a revolution that essentially is changing the world. I find that maybe it isn't SaaS, and I'm playing a game on tricks down here. What I find essentially what SaaS is giving us is more of an opportunity to see it as sales as a science rather than just this gut feel-based selling. I am not, as a former rainmaker myself, and being a leader of a rainmaker, I am not against rainmaker sales. I love superstar selling, but it needs to be applied to high ACV dollar sales where it is absolutely applicable. It won't have a room in a high velocity industrial size manufacturing style process of selling where the name of the game is metrics, metrics, metrics. With that said, I'm going to open it up for a final round of questions. On your mark. Who has the microphone last? There we go. Okay. Any questions? Somebody is going to see me trip and go like, see, I knew he was going to trip on that. Downhill is better than uphill. Yes.
What are the main?
Yeah, it's a button. Yep.
Okay. What are the main difference that you see in terms of culture from the Brazilian market to the American market when you're talking about SaaS and acquisition?
Okay, so when you eat food, you take a steak. What do you put on the steak?
Salt.
Salt, spices.
Yes.
Okay.
Not barbecue sauce. Salt and pepper only. You
Okay,
cannot put sauce on the steak.
In America, what would they put on a steak?
Sauce.
Which one?
Barbecue.
Or fries with ketchup.
Yes, ketchup.
So
Exactly.
America has 3 sauces: ketchup, soy sauce, and garlic sauce. Garlic. Like these are the 3 things they make every piece of food with, right? You can have every kind of food, but these are the 3 things. Now I go to Brazil and I got like, what is the things that I take back? No more bags of that stuff, by the way. We are still low. What's that stuff that we put on the steak that I take that I like so much? It's like, you give me bags full of it. Anyway, if I go down here, I get so much flavor in the food. Like, I just like the steak, not because of the steak, but for whatever reason, the salt or the nature of the steak taste and so on. And so what I find is that is different, is that in generally, we take on the American junk food as it comes delivered to us through the forms of SaaS models and through training and coaching, and we do not apply the Brazilian spice to it. I rather see that you actually develop your own meals and use a little bit of American spice on it, whatever spice we have, but use a little bit of that. The big thing that I find is that the Brazilian culture is a very passionate culture, and it's very much people love to communicate with each other. And so you can leverage that as the people communicate with each other, whether it's through a Zoom session or whether it's an in-person session. But that cultural diversity is way more here than it is in America, and so for me, this finds its way in how you recruit, this finds its way in how you talk to your clients, the way how you write a proposal, and all the things. In America, we are a little too transactional for this. And so I see this, for example, of Resultados Digitais. We see that the younger people are more energetic, more passionate, and so on and so forth. It has a downside. People move on pretty quickly down here too, and like I find that everybody has a tendency to not only have one job, but have multiple jobs, obviously because of the economic situation. But as a result, people are not really committed to jobs one way or another. And so you find that a little bit. On the other hand, I see that certain employers actually think that because I'm the best company invented on earth, like you shall stay with me. So we see the opposite too. And neither is the case. So these are all like things that are currently developing, and I see that. But where I see the biggest hope for all of you folks, SaaS does very well in a disturbed market, in a market that is undergoing stress of the outside, political stress, gosh forbid war, but like anything of nature that puts it under stress. The economic fall down of the real estate market in the US, 2008, gave rise to the SaaS sales. 2003 gave rise to the birth of SaaS. SaaS does very well in markets because essentially, no offense, it's a middle finger up against the established and say like, hey, we're going to do it our way. We're going to do it at a fraction of the cost. And so you'll see a lot of companies doing very, very well So, around the world, Brazilian market, Turkish market, American market, UK, all these markets are currently in turmoil. But for this group of people in this audience, essentially it provides lots of opportunity. Next question. The culture of the buyers to buy SaaS? I find that the people in Brazil are not financially motivated. They actually pay full price. They never ask for a discount. Yeah, duh. There's like a few markets in the world. Brazil. Which one is another super sensitive economical market? Do you know? Where everybody asks straight away for a discount. Give me another market. Mexico? Say that. Turkish for sure. Like yes, there's a deal everywhere. And as they say in Dutch, kijken niet kopen, which means you're going to look, but you're never going to buy. Israel, negotiating, it's tough. India and China, and the Dutch. So what we find is that in the Brazilian markets, because of the SaaS model operating at a fraction of the cost, it essentially is a market that is well suited for SaaS buying. Obviously, people get used to the lower prices too, and so on and so forth, which is the reason why we put in the 40% metric, to make sure that we put some safety guards in there, so you don't go overboard. Okay, excuse me. With that said, I'm going to just stay around here downstairs for anybody who wants to ask personal questions, but I'm going to hand it back to Renata. The microphone is two rows up. I'll give it back to Renata for the close. Thank you very much for having me today. Yeah, you're welcome.
Alguém quer fazer alguma pergunta em português? Porque às vezes a pessoa se sente meio tímida. Alguém? Quer? Bom, então, com isso, a gente encerra aqui a nossa participação. Eu queria deixar um e-mail para vocês, o meu e-mail e o e-mail da Winning by Design Brasil. Então, é brasil@winningbydesign.com e renata@winningbydesign.com. Se vocês quiserem receber essa apresentação e os frameworks, mandem esse e-mail para a gente. A gente não está pegando e-mail de vocês individualmente, porque se vocês quiserem, vocês mandem para a gente, certo? A gente também não gosta de fazer spam e não gosta de importunar ninguém. Outra coisa interessante, se vocês quiserem saber quais são os eventos que a gente está fazendo em São Paulo, no Brasil, no mundo, vocês entrem. A gente tem algumas formas de contato que a gente comunica com várias pessoas ao mesmo tempo. Instagram, Renata Winning by Design, Clarissa Winning by Design. E também no LinkedIn, Renata Centurion. Vocês podem encontrar também o Jacco, se vocês se conectarem com ele. Parênteses. Toda vez que ele vem para o Brasil, tem pelo menos umas 1.500 pessoas que se conectam com ele pelo LinkedIn. Não achem que ele não está falando com vocês, demora, tá? Porque ele fica mais ou menos um mês para conseguir falar com todo mundo que entra em contato com ele quando ele está aqui no Brasil. Tudo bem? Gente, muito obrigada. Um prazer estar com vocês. Valeu!